Appreciate everyone calling into the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl media availability with Georgia. Reminder, you will not need to record. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl will be recording and we'll distribute that to each of you following the session. As you know, we'll begin this morning with Coach Smart, then we'll follow with defensive coordinator Dan Lanning and some players. And we'll begin, ask Coach Smart just for a very brief opening comment, and then we'll go to questions. Coach Smart.
First, I'd like to open with thanking Gary Stoken and the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl staff. They've always done a tremendous job with this bowl. It's always been near and dear to my heart because I was fortunate enough to play in it twice, but it's a special event. Our team has been working really hard to prepare for Cincinnati, and I've spoken on Cincinnati, it seems like a lot. They're a tremendous team. Luke has done an incredible job with his staff and their team. You know, I've talked repeatedly about the fact that they're one of the winningest teams in all of college football over the last 3 years. They're a complete team. Like when you look at them, you know, we play teams with really good offense, really good defense, but I don't know that we played anybody with all three, including special teams, in areas that they're really strong in. When you've got an experienced quarterback, in my time in coaching, I found that the more experienced the quarterback, the better the team is, and they certainly have that. They've got a great player. So with that, we'll open it up.
All right, we'll begin with questions. We'll try to go maybe two at a time. Let's begin with Anthony Dasher from UGAsports.com, and then we'll go to Chip Towers from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Hey, Coach, I know we've asked you about Desmond before and a few Zoom calls that you've had, and y'all faced, quote-unquote dual threat quarterbacks before. What is different about the way he goes about his business that maybe opposed some of the other guys you have faced in recent years?
He's really smart. You know, he puts them in the right play a lot. I think they put a lot on him check-wise. You can see he does a great job of getting them in the right play. You very rarely see them in a play that is bad for them, meaning when somebody's doing this, they're doing this. They have an answer for whatever you do, and he's done a great job of putting them in the right play. And he's a really good athlete. I think it's deceiving how fast he is because he has really long legs. So when he takes off running, I mean, you see him outrunning people all over the place. And you know, when you started outrunning linebackers and DBs in college football, it says a lot about your speed. And there's times where plays have broken down, and he's turned those into big-time gains and big-time plays. But just a tremendous passer, tremendous athlete when you talk about dual threat capabilities, and he's got really good people around him.
Have you ever seen a quarterback with a 91-yard touchdown run before?
Not that I remember. I'm sure somebody probably has, but I don't remember anybody going 91.
Thank you.
Coach, you touched on this yesterday that you felt like Richard LeCount was making a pretty hard run at trying to play in this game. So since then, there's been a pretty good photo on Twitter of him, leaping for a ball in practice and him saying shh, but could you talk about just the ability of him trying to play in this game, and what would you say that the odds are of him being able to participate?
Yeah, I can't put odds on it. I don't know. It all boils down to the health and safety of that young man. If he's capable of playing winning football, he'll go out there and play. I mean, he's never been shy about it. He wants to play. He's a football player. That's the way he's been since he was in 9th grade, and I watched him running around playing spring football down in Liberty County. That's just who he is. He loves the game. He enjoys the game. He's pushing really hard. He's taking a lot of reps. He's taking a lot of reps with the twos, but he's working hard to get out there and play. And it's going to be conditioning. It's going to be physicality. It's going to be how comfortable he is in terms of. I mean, when you go that long without playing, it's not always just straight line speed. It's throwing on the brakes. It's understanding angles. It's feeling confident in contact because it's a physical sport. So I don't know what the odds are. I know he's out there doing everything he can to be able to play, and we'll have to make a game time decision on whether he's able to or not.
All right, let's go to Mark Weiser, Athens Banner Herald, and then to Seth Emerson with The Athletic.
Kirby, you mentioned the other day that COVID was one of the opponents, obviously. And since then, Missouri had to pull out of their bowl game. How are you guys doing 4 days before this game?
It's a thrill a minute. We've had good information, bad information that changed. So it's been a struggle. I can say that, but that's really all I can say about it. I'm not going to get into details, but we've had our we had our issues.
You said you're not going to get into details. When you see information change, you're talking about positive, false, something like that?
I mean, you take it for what it's worth. It just changes every day, Mark. So I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that we've dealt with a lot of things, a lot more things here recently than we have in the past.
Kirby, when you look at your defense in 2020, ranked first in the SEC yards per play allowed, but 2 games obviously stick out. Do you look at it in the big picture as you faced different kind of opponents, especially those 2 very high octane offenses, or do you look at it as your defense? How do you look at your defense in the context of the whole season and its performance?
Well, I would first say the season's not over, so we try to look at it in the context of the entire season. And although we won't have the exact same defense out there for this one that we had most of the season, we'll have some of the same guys. But to be honest, we didn't have the whole defense out there after Kentucky the rest of the year in terms of complete and healthy. But that's the case all across college football. We try to go back and look at things from a perspective of an entire season. Be objective about it, try to find areas that we can improve in and things we can work on. And it won't be any different with this group. I'm certainly very pleased with our staff, the work they put in, the teaching they do. I'm very pleased with our players, how hard, how conscientious they've been about learning what we want to do defensively. And look, you're not going to play in football in general, but in college football anymore, and not give up plays, because the risk you have to take to give negative plays gives you an opportunity to give up explosive plays. And one of the key ingredients is, can you give people lost yardage plays? Can you get tackles for loss? Can you get sacks? And we've actually done that at a higher clip than we have in the past. We just got to improve in not giving up as many explosives, and then you've got a recipe for what you want.
Let's go to Mike Griffith with Dog Nation, and then followed up with Bill Dennison from WLW Cincinnati.
Hey, Coach, you've told us one of the things you do is look at the opposing defense. I want to ask you about Marcus Freeman. I know he's a finalist for the Broyles Award. I'm pretty sure you won that award yourself. That turnover streak Cincinnati has, the number 2 pass efficiency defense, what are they doing over there, and what have you seen from that coach?
Well, he does a tremendous job. They have some different schemes than we play in our league, and they give you different looks. They're very multiple, and the 3-down and 4-down looks they can give you. They have a couple guys that play hybrid positions, and they can be, quasi linebacker, quasi safety, and they do a good job mixing that up. So it's not like you can say, oh, they're like them. They're like, or they're like them. They're not like really anybody we play, and that's unique. And they play extremely hard. They're very sound in what they do. They're good at what they do. And when you create turnovers like they do, I mean, that's probably one of the most amazing stats that I've ever seen in terms of generating that many turnovers or that many games in a row. I mean, I've been coaching defensive football for a long time, around some really good defenses, and I don't know that has ever happened. So number one, it's a credit to them and what they're doing to generate those turnovers, and we got to try to avoid them.
Coach, can you talked a little bit about Desmond Ridder, but what about the other offensive weapons that Cincinnati has? I mean, running backs and the wide receivers. Yeah,
their backs are really physical. Both get downhill. They complement each other. Really good players, out at wideout. They've had the emergence. The Pierce kid's done a great job. He gets the ball vertical, makes a lot of plays down the field. The speed they have out there with Young and Trey Tucker are really exceptional. I mean, when you look across the board, the complete group of wideouts, probably right there outside of Alabama, is as good as we've faced in terms of wideouts. They do a great job using their tight ends. Those 2 tight ends are huge, and they do a great job in the run game of mixing their tight ends in to create run-pass conflicts for players. And when you look at their tight ends, they do a tremendous job doing it. So Ritter's got a great group of guys there that he can use to pass the ball.
Let's go to Dean Legge with Dog Post, and then to Charles Odom, Associated Press.
Kirby, there's been a lot of discussion this week and leading up to this month about teams like Cincinnati, who are undefeated, not getting a shot at being in the playoff. From your perspective so far, what have you seen from them? How do they compare against teams that you've seen in playoff in the past?
Well, they're, like I said earlier, they're the most complete. I think the problem this year is not necessarily them being undefeated. It's the not having the cross-conference games. It's hard to compare. Like if they had a year, and I don't know how many guys they play out of conference in a traditional year, but if they were able to go and get a Big Ten and SEC, some other opponents, it makes it much easier to compare that. It's harder this year. It's harder for us because when you look at stats and you look at resumes, everything within conference it's within your conference. So it's only relative to your conference. You don't get to get cross-conference comparisons, which makes it tougher. It's not to say that if they had played out-of-conference opponents, they definitely would have got in. I don't know that. I know this. They're a really, really, really well-coached, sound, talented football team. And when you got a quarterback, a good defense, and great special teams, you very rarely beat yourself. So regardless of who they're playing, they're winning and they're doing it the right way. They're playing really sound football, which makes them a high quality opponent.
Kirby, as your guys have come back from their break, have you gotten a feel for their hunger, for their morale, et cetera, coming into this game? And does it make a difference, the hunger factor, not having that last senior game and also being able to play, close to home for family?
Yeah, I think our guys are in a great place. I think the time away, I noticed that for the Missouri week, the best practices we had were the time away they had the weekend before for the Missouri week. And it's been kind of the same way. They got a little time away for Christmas. And since they've come back, really only been not even 48 hours, but they've been tremendous in terms of focus, attention to detail, guys being places on time. You don't have school going on, so you have a little more time with your players. But what you don't want to do is bog them down with being over here all day. There's a fine balance between too much and not enough. And balancing that as a coach is tough. So we've had morning sessions and everything like that to help out.
Let's go to Jake Road, Dogs 247, and then we'll go to Anthony Patterson in Cincinnati.
Kirby, you just hit on the fact that you guys don't have school right now. You're also not getting to have the traditional bowl experience. Do you try to use some of that time that they're not spending in school to maybe do a little thing, do new things, keep it fresh? And what are some of those things you guys are doing to have fun and kind of build team stuff and just be a family right now?
Hard in COVID, opponent number 3 besides Cincinnati, there's not a lot you can do. So everything you think about doing that's fun, put a mask on them, tell them they can't go public places. And what are you going to do? Play kickball, play wiffle ball in the indoor. They're over here a lot already, so the fun we try to have is in the meetings, in our walkthroughs, in our focus for the game. But the fun is always been in winning for me. And how do you win the game best? You have good practices. You have competitive practices. You try to raise the temperature a little bit to get the competitive nature and the fire with which your opponent's going to play with, and say, hey, match my intensity in practice. If I'm not going to be the guy in the game, can you match my intensity in practice so that you can match his when the game time comes? But we've had, say, hey, you got 4 to 6, you can go to the bowling alley. But if you go to the bowling alley, you got to wear your mask the whole time. You got to stay in your lanes. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got all kinds of stipulations. At the end of the day, our guys feel most comfortable being in their own environment, which is here or at home.
Hey, Kurt. Just from a standpoint, you as a coach, we know being a coach of UGA, you have national championship aspirations basically every single year. But this year obviously didn't work that way. But you guys are able to play in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl as a consolation prize after not being able to play in the Chick-fil-A opening kickoff game this year. My question is basically, how does it feel to have this as a prize, even though you guys weren't able to compete for a national championship? And how do you embrace just this challenge of being able to build and get some guys experiences that may have not been able to get as much playing time throughout the year?
Yeah, I look at it as a blessing, because when you get to a New Year's Six bowl, that's an accomplishment. Let's be honest. Not everyone gets to go to a New Year's Six bowl. So I'm not going to diminish that or say it's a disappointment, because I think when you do that, you set yourself up for failure. If every year is a disappointment that you don't get to the playoffs, or you don't get to the national championship game, or you don't win the national championship, what kind of lessons are you teaching, your players and your kids in life? A lot of the goals I set as a young man, a young player, I didn't necessarily reach them, but when I fell short, I still fell in success. And there's a certain barometer that what is success and what is it defined as. And for us, getting to a New Year's Six bowl is, one of the expectations we have every year. And this is an awesome bowl game. You get to play a top 10 opponent. You're right. You do get to play some guys that maybe have not gotten as much of an opportunity this year, and they're going to get an opportunity to play. And that's great. It's a blessing for next year. But the focus is how you finish this year for the seniors and the guys that may be leaving as juniors. This is their last game of their career. You want to send them out on top at Georgia.
All right, let's go to Mark Bradley, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and then to Brandon Sudge, Macon Telegraph.
Yeah, Kirby, a couple of weeks ago, Greg Sankey said that he hoped that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the teams of 2020 that played through all this will be brought back for homecoming and honored and given, I guess, recognition for what they went through. I know you have pressing business with UC this week, but are you able to step back and think, man, look at what we've been through, and now we're about to finish our season?
Yeah, I have not, Mark, had the ability to step back and look at that, but I will. Because if you could just write a book on this season, I mean, it would be hard for me to imagine people being able to handle another year like this year back to back. And I have no idea what the future holds. So I'm not suggesting anything. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know. I'm not a medical expert. I don't know where it's headed. But I think when you talk across the board, it's like you don't really know what your pain threshold is for pain until you have pain. I'm not comparing this to pain, but I'd like to be able to say, I don't know what the threshold is for what you can deal with in a season and stay sane. And we've stretched that rubber band about as far as you can. The elasticity is ready to break in terms of what you can withstand to have a season and go through. And it's really tough because it's competitive, and look at the coaches that lost their jobs during this year. I mean, that just, to me, shows that, it wasn't a free pass year. It wasn't that. And sometimes for the kids, it kind of was. But for the guys that are organizing things and trying to stay on top of it and win games, it's extremely competitive, and rightfully so, because we're paid a lot of money. But to go through another year like this and to look back on this year, I definitely think it will be looked upon as, that this group was a special group to endure what they've endured.
Thank you.
Hey, Kirby, kind of following up on that. I mean, after you guys have gone, what is it? I mean, 3.5 months without many issues with COVID, and you said your team is fortunate. Do you kind of have some disappointment, like, for your guys, in the fact that you're having issues now? Some of them might not be able to play, given the fact that all that they've sacrificed over the whole year.
Well, I didn't say that anybody wouldn't be able to play, so I don't want to say that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, there's always issues and problems, and it doesn't matter whether it's contact tracing or other guys having tests and just being affected in the organization, just everybody, not just the players. So I want to lead with that, but certainly would be disappointed if we lost guys that weren't able to play in the game, but they were able to play all year. You know what I mean? Like that stinks, especially if it's kind of like the last go round. It's like, where does the merry-go-round stop? We missed this game got moved, this got adjusted, but none of it was ever on behalf of us. It was on behalf of our opponents. And then if it ends up, being the case with us, which I don't think it will be, but if a guy misses a game because of it, you certainly hate it for that guy, because, it's tough because he was successful all year, and one time out of 12 or one time out of 11, you get a situation where somebody has an outbreak and it can affect the whole team.
Got time for one more question. Let's go to John Frierson, GeorgiaDogs.com. Okay, last question. Allison, do you have one from WSB? Last call, David Pascal.
Kirby, just kind of curious. I know this thing is going to be configured to seat 15, 16,000 or whatever it's going to be. Do you expect some kind of atmosphere in here? And if I had to ask, having gone through this season, what's been the best atmosphere y'all have played in? Was it the early game against Auburn? I mean, that seemed kind of loud. I just didn't know what the best atmosphere you've experienced.
Yeah, not really thinking about it. I would probably say the Auburn atmosphere would have been the best. And that night at home for us seemed like it had the most crowd noise to it. I expect it to be great. You know, you would think it might be louder in the dome with that number of people because that's outside. You know, outside you figure the noise may not be the same, but I'm expecting it to be as good as we've played in anywhere in the dome because I think it'll seem more full than maybe a 93,000 seat stadium with 20,000 as opposed to whatever Mercedes holds with how many we have in it. I'm expecting it to be a great atmosphere. But again, the players turn that off once the game starts. I know it's hard to believe, but you don't hear that, you know, whether there's 15, 20 or 90,000, you go out and play the game.
Thank you, Coach Smart. Thanks
Thank you,
everyone
guys.
for calling in. And everyone, please remain on the line, and we'll be back to you momentarily with Coach Lanning.